You're listening to the Live Out Loud podcast with River Wynn and Michelle Flamer.
Hi, River.
Good morning, Michelle.
You have your coffee.
I drank all my coffee.
Hmm.
Ready to rock and roll, baby.
Pounded that this morning. Usually it lingers.
Not today. I didn't sleep well last night, and so it was needed this morning.
Yeah, you said it was really cold up there.
Yeah, it got down to -10 last night.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, you see who's on the call with us, don't you?
I know, and I'm so excited right now.
I know. It is
No one else
literally one of my longtime besties, Kris. And I am so freaking stoked that she's here today because there's been this beautiful evolution that's gone on in her life. And when I tell you, and we'll talk a little bit about just even her handle in social media and how that's evolved, and it tells you everything about where she is in her life. And I freaking love that so much. So without further ado, Kris, hello.
Hey,
Hello.
hey, Michelle. Hey, River. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah,
We're excited to have you here.
Yeah,
Tell
very
thanks.
tell our
Yeah.
beautiful listeners a little bit about your background
Sure.
and how you came to be an astrologer.
Yeah. So I went to West Point and graduated and was commissioned in the Army for 7 years. And so I did some military intelligence work in the Army. And I kind of had this idea that I wanted to be. I'm an Aries. We'll talk a little bit about all this. Aries sun, Pisces moon, Gemini rising. And there's a thing about justice for me and most Aries. And I wanted to be in the FBI. So I got in. I was the third class hired after 9/11. Pretty remarkable period to start your career.
Yeah.
And served 21 years, loved it. I got to work at the White House. I got to work under President Obama, which was the highlight of my career. I got to travel all over the world. I got to supervise and lead FBI agents. And then I took an astrology class a couple years before, like back in 2020, 2021, when we all were looking for things to do. And it kind of changed my life and changed my where I was going next. And I saw, learning my own chart, I realized I needed to retire and become an astrologer. So I retired just in August, opened up my own astrology business, KB Insight. And here I am rocking and rolling and empowering. The thing for me is, spending 30 years defending our country and, doing a lot of important work. Now I really want to empower individuals. Like, it's so important to do the individual work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so connected with what's going on in the universe right now, spiritually. So it's amazing. And I'm really, really blessed to be in this position.
So,
and
wow.
KB, yeah. Can the KB? Yeah.
Yes,
so
that's what I was
email,
just about to say. Yes, go into the KB.
like, this is when you and I met in Los Angeles at WeHo Gay Pride. I was
2003 or 2004,
Yep.
somewhere around there.
I was going to ask
Yes.
how you two met, how you two knew each other. So
Well,
I'm glad you said that.
she'll tell you right here. Yeah.
All right. It's a great story too. So 2002, I decided to go to Pride. And the person I went with, like, you just pick one girl out there that you think is really attractive. And I think I picked somebody that was a mutual friend. And Michelle came to dinner. And that's how we got to meet. And we've been pretty close since then. But at the time, my email, is this kind of similar?
I mean, in a sense, it's like,
I mean, different scenario. We weren't at Pride, but like Michelle just like comes along, and then you're best friends for life.
It's kind of cool. Like, fate brings people into your lives at the right time. And it was really, that woman that I thought I had a crush on wasn't the important piece. It was Michelle. So my email address was KB thinker at AOL.com. And I just went through a metamorphosis in Los Angeles. I mean, how can you not when you've got access to so much spiritual guidance? I started practicing Buddhism and I changed it to KB Feeler. So I am much more in touch with my Pisces moon. And it was like when I saw my Pisces moon on my chart, I was like, no wonder.
And now you're KB
Insight. Yeah. So I'm now KB Insight. Full circle.
Cool.
I love that. It's such a cool story. Like, what a pivot from FBI to astrologer.
Yeah, you're all,
beautiful thing.
Army, astrology. They both start with A's. That's literally the only thing in common there.
It's crazy. So yeah, how I've navigated through all of life to get to where I am now. I know all my leadership experiences really helps because I want to be able to empower people, and so many people are really challenged with leadership issues and questions, or even leading them themselves. Like so, it's really I've been really lucky.
Well, one of the things that I was very privileged to is having deep conversations and deep diving things where Kris was a conscious leader within her FBI, within her FBI career. And the privilege was listening to her kind of process out loud conflict resolution and how she wanted to have and leave this legacy of not being the typical, patriarchy type of, kind of construct or whatever, like kind of cutting that out and being like, I'm embracing that I'm a woman in this position. Yes, we have rules to follow, but I want to lead from a conscious heart space so that we can build deeper connections. And you don't do that, like government jobs, like you typically don't have someone like that. And there's something so beautiful about that. And I think what I'm excited for your new career is that I see it as like a company, like team building where you get to like have them understand where each of them is coming from within their signs, within their astrology chart, and also create a deep, meaningful experience for things like that based on, I mean, you can't get more government than FBI.
It's really beautiful how you just articulated that, because I'm doing a lot of apprenticeship work by working one-on-one with people, and I'm just learning more and more. And, I've learned a lot already, but it's about empowering one individual. But my broadest goal and vision is to be able to, and I think we're moving in this direction, being able to consult with Fortune 500 companies, or like-minded companies, women running these companies that actually want to use astrology as a backdrop, because it's just a framework. I mean, I believe in it. It's crazy what the planets can tell us, but it's awesome because you can have real conversations with real people, and you can rally around like, what are we different, how are we in sync, and be able to talk about how do we move this company? Let's develop a strategy together through personal dynamics.
I think moving into this 2024, because we've been, River and I have been deep diving like where the collective is at this moment, and the spiritual guidance from folks like Bailey or Angela. And, we had Bailey recently on the podcast kind of talking about where the divine feminine collective is currently.
Yeah.
And how interesting, more importantly, where the divine masculine is not, and the divine feminines in a CEO, the C-suite leadership, that there are going to be more divine feminines. And meaning, we always like to preface that with divine, when we're talking about divine feminine and divine masculine, there are no genders. It's the core of someone, or it's the spectrum of maybe this week I'm leaning more into my divine feminine, but when I'm making decisions and I'm super coming from logical, I'm in my divine masculine space at that moment. So we like to always encourage and educate our listeners, because a lot of them are new in been recently spiritually awakened and things like that. So we always just try to speak from truth and, not claim to be anything other than speaking within what we are kind of learning and downloading. So with astrology, I think it can go so many different ways because it all depends, kind of like your therapist. Like it all depends on their life experience and where you can connect with that person. And the thing that I love and this is literally my phone call with Kris, and I love this so much. Like we'll just be I'll just catch up, da, 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 and then all of a sudden I'll say something. She goes, "Hold on, let me look at your chart." And there's
It's
nothing
true.
better than having a critical thinker looking at your chart and telling you like in a heart space where you're going to be,
Yes.
where like, or just validating like the thoughts that I was having, and just like having someone as that it's a different kind of check-in. It's really cool.
Yeah. If you don't, if it's cool, I'd like to just talk about like one of the transits that you were going through. Like
Yeah.
you had the planet Neptune, which is the spiritual awakening planet, and it was crossing your sun, or it was actually in an aspect. It had an aspect to your sun, and it was there for quite some time. It was probably 2022, 2023. But Neptune on in its highest edge, like or end, gives us this access to spirituality and visions and dreams. At its lowest end, it makes us kind of feel delusional.
Mm.
The aspect was Neptune was crossing your Venus, the planet of love. And what happens at the highest end, you like have this like loving feeling. You see the potential in the people that you're dating or the person that you're with. The downside is if that potential doesn't exist, it's easy to fool yourself. And so I remember having conversations with you about like, what are the facts here? What's showing up versus what we all want to do is see the potential. But when you're going through that aspect, it gets magnified. So it's helpful to have an astrologer be like, this is it's a permission slip, but it's also, oh gosh, I am doing that. And it's not my fault. It's just the stars are giving me this energy.
Wow.
Isn't that
It's so cool
cool?
to hear that like deep dive explained. And I'm like thinking about that time period in your life, Michelle, and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what we're talking about here.
Oh, 100%. And she's actually, yeah, that's what she's telling. Yeah, that's what she's saying there. And it is, but this is like life with one of your besties that is an astrologer. Like you're just going to, hey, I just needed your love and comfort. And then it's
So we
like,
all need a
hold
Kris
on
in
a
our
Wait a
second.
second. Let me look at your chart. I do that to all my friends. It's super fun. It gets me, excited, and I keep learning. And then, it also helps me figure out if it resonates or not. And yeah, so it's really cool. I'm really lucky I have friends that love to hear about it.
Oh yeah. In fact, it's funny because it's starting to like stick with me a little bit. So when she's saying water, I'm all, oh, that equals feelings, or like I'm starting to learn by through osmosis, obviously. But it is really fascinating. I think speaking of like Delulu for people, and I think with social media around soulmates and twin flames and the one, I think it's really fascinating using astrology as a kind of a touch point, like a little bit more of because it's something you can physically see because it's in the chart. And I think
Mhm.
there's something cool about how it can ground around all of those feelings. And can you just discuss that a little bit and share like,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, there's a bunch of different parts on a person's natal chart that gives you insight into how they show up in relationships. And if anybody is familiar with their natal chart, if they go to where their descendant, which is the DC line, it's near the seventh house, and they take a look at the chart there, they can kind of see which planet. Like in the case of River, she has her descendant runs through Taurus. And then you might need to do a little bit of research, or you can just call me and I can, give you this insight. But Venus rules Taurus. And so that means that River's relationship planet is Venus. And so for her relationships, and this isn't the relationship planet itself is Venus, but for her, it's even magnified more because it's actually her relationship planet. And harmony is super important. So she has to, it's very important for her to like be in harmony with another individual. And that's beautiful. And you're seeking harmony. You're seeking somebody who is maybe artistic and loving and loves to be in relationship. But the downside is making sure you have those boundaries. So the other piece that you can take a look at is a synastry reading. Like I give synastry readings where you take both charts and you overlay them. And then I can see what planets people are lighting up in each other's houses. As an example, I was dating a couple months ago, and this woman lit up my fourth house. My fourth house is the family house, the ancestors, and the childhood wounds. So guess what happened when I started dating this woman?
You were triggered.
I got lots of triggers. And my father was showing up. I'm like, what? I got to stop this. So yeah, there's a lot of information on the chart relationship wise. A lot of insight that you can get for sure.
Does it, as an astrologer, as a woman, as a single woman now, and you're in that dating scope, do you like after every date or like during, like, do you ask them for their like that information so that you can deep dive for this? Like, how often has it been right? And where like sometimes you're like, I'm just gonna go organic here. I'm gonna go like, do you ever just like go organically into it, or do you always need to look at their charts? I'm just curious.
I always have to look, but it is an interesting question. You don't want to ask them in the beginning, like, tell me your date of birth and your place of birth, especially once they find out I'm a retired FBI agent. That doesn't go over so well. So
okay, didn't think of that part. That's funny, actually.
Are you looking at my chart, or are you looking at my whole life?
Exactly. Like, are you running a name, like a database check on me? Like, it's not as prevalent now that I'm not in the FBI, but when I was. So usually when people find out I'm an astrologer, they'll just provide me that information because they're kind of interested. But yeah, I do. And I find it's remarkably accurate. It's really remarkably accurate. I did a synastry reading for a friend of mine, and they were talking on the phone and they were about to meet, and they're like, oh, we're just going to be friends. I'm like, nope. Becky, you are totally highlighting her seventh house. You can say you're just going to be friends, but she's going to take one look at you and your energy and, just get to know her essence. And it's like marriage material or relationship material. And they're lovers right now. So it's I find it's pretty darn accurate.
God, that's so freaking cool. So
not me now, every single time I date someone, sending you all their information.
Totally.
Yes, do it.
You know what? I honestly feel like you should have your link to quick things, but charge for like $5 just to say like, hey, can you just check this person and tell me what house, like specific, like what house are they in? What should I look for? Like 2 or 3.
It's a great idea. And I think that is something that I'm revising because I'm just finding that some people don't have time for an hour natal chart deep dives. But I will tell you, the people that are going through massive change make time for it.
They do.
But I agree. I think, there's a business model, and I've seen other astrologers do this, where you just give quick hits. I show up, I'm gay asses. Gay Ass is Gay Astrology, ASF, and they are a queer dance venue that they do these gay dance clubs every month. So cool. And I'm their resident astrologer. And so there's a new gay bar in LA called Ruby Fruit. And so I show up and give 20-minute readings for, a really small charge, and it can be really life-changing. I sat down with somebody last week and I looked at her chart and my eyes bulged out because there's certain, this is going to lead us into 2024. We've got pretty remarkable year coming up because we've got Pluto is finishing its last degree in Capricorn.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that in a second. But when I looked at her chart, I saw Pluto, which is the planet of transformation, death and destruction. It's like this amazing
Tower
planet, but
moment,
it
right? Like in tarot, it's called like a tower moment where the change happens.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so she had it on top of Venus. And I like my eyes bulged out. And that just basically, I'm like, are you having relationship issues? And she's like, I just got into a major fight with my girlfriend last night. Yeah. So it's just that you can't not feel a Pluto transit. By the way, both of you are going to have Pluto transits in the next
I'm
few
aware
years.
that I'm about to hit one for like isn't it like 20 years or something?
Yeah. So yeah, Pluto stays
That's
in
daunting to
Aquarius.
me a little bit because I
No,
just
you're
did the
fine.
math.
You're fine. It's just 2 or 3 years.
What-
It really depends on because you got your sun at the beginning part of
Gotcha.
Aquarius.
Okay.
So let's talk about Pluto. Unless, I mean, is it cool to talk about this year?
Yeah, no,
I'm,
you're
I'm like,
free to
now I
roam.
want to know what's my Pluto transit? Like, what is this going to
I
mean for
will.
me?
Yes, I will take a look at that here in a second, but let me talk about like big picture what's happening 2024.
Would love
So
that.
Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008. And in Capricorn, it has this energy. Pluto destroys in order to evolve. And new places get put in place because something's gotten destroyed. And so you can take a look at all the destruction we've seen since 2008. And the patriarch is really, I feel like, on its last legs. So you've got the financial crisis, the real estate crisis that happened in 2009. You have had all these governments, these democratic institutions that have been like materializing in Syria and then and Iran, and then they get tampered down. You've got authoritarianism and these regimes, tyranny. You've got Trump getting elected, President Trump getting elected. So it's taking the foundational institutions, which is Capricorn, and it's the kind of like the elite, the people running government, and it's destroying the things that aren't serving our purpose. So it moves into Aquarius for good in 2025. In 2024, we're going to get a snippet of it. It's going to January 20th, just coming up in a couple weeks, the sun and Pluto are going to both move into Aquarius. So this Aquarius attitude is it's the collective rising up. It's the humanitarians. It's the people who haven't had a voice, kind of like overthrowing stuff. And that's what we're looking at for the next 20 years. However, it goes back down to Capricorn. Pluto will dip into Aquarius, and then it moves back down into Capricorn, and it does its last. So I don't really know what this means. It does its last stirring up of bullshit that we just need to get rid of. And I hope to God that all this stirring up happens during the summer and during like these months where we can just be like, we got to friggin' vote because we've got an election that's coming up.
Yep.
And this is where like the death and destruction and the shit that happens to us that we don't like, we have a voice. And so my hope is that this is, good news, but we are going to see some dips in the collective humanity. We see what's happening in Gaza. We're going to see a little bit more of that, unfortunately. So
that's what we were sort of talking about with regards to the collective with Bailey on that episode, because we're realizing that people in general, the collective, whether it's divine masculines that are awakened or divine feminines, that we are going through a space of, are our careers fundamentally spiritually lifting us up and sort of moving out and becoming more aware of doing things that light us up and that really like lift. And so, because when more people are doing what they love, right, Kris, the more we light up earth, and the more that people are joyous and live from more of a joyful place, as opposed to feeling like that boomer era of like 40 hours a week for 40 years and like this whole new generation of millennials and Gen X's and I mean, not Gen Ed, well, Gen X's are leading the path, but the Gen Z's and the Gen Alphas, these are all kids coming up that are going to be game changers. They're light workers. They are, so it's Gen X parents that are
Mm-hmm.
waking up right now in order to
Mm-hmm.
consciously parent so that our kids feel free, feel liberated to do what literally
Yes.
feels good in their core.
Yeah, and like we
Yeah.
talked about with Bailey, like, and what you just said, Chris, too, is like patriarchy is dying.
Totally.
You
Yes, it
can
is.
feel it, and like
You can.
even right now with everything that is going on with Palestine and all of that, you see that current
Yeah.
of a lot of countries
Not
are
working.
starting to be like, hey, US, UK, like colonizer countries, it's time to hold you accountable for this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very
Yep.
patriarchal colonizing. And so
Mm-hmm.
we talked about with Bailey, like how like the matriarchy is coming back. We're shifting.
Mm-hmm.
We're shifting in it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious to see if we're gonna do like a big swing where it's like, you go from one extreme to the other, if we're gonna find like kind of a middle ground between the masculine and feminine in that way. I'm curious to see.
I hope so. I mean, it would be nice. I mean, I think I think the whole spiritual movement, you've got Saturn, by the way, and Neptune in Pisces. It's the last year it's going to be in Pisces full year, and then it moves, it dips into it in 2025. It dips into Aries. But this year, it really is about spiritual awakening. And with the Neptune, the spiritual awakening planet in Pisces, it really is this building this energy for the spiritual awakening. And then Saturn provides this foundational structure. Saturn is like the structure, it's the earth element. So it's like, okay, we need structure for the spirituality. Where's the convergence of career and spirituality? The convergence of what we're studying in school and spirituality. So we're really seeing this shift that a lot of people are getting. And I think a lot of people are waking up this year because of those planets.
Have you had any clients yet that want to understand their kids' chart and parent from there?
Yeah.
Because human design is really allowing us to understand kind of like Hayden is a projector and how parenting a projector is way different than parenting a generator or a reflector. So within astrology, we have
Absolutely.
like a lot of moms here that are spiritually in tune. What's a good suggestion, or is it more just calling, just scheduling an hour with you and doing that, and getting some advice through that?
I just gave one of my really good friends, actually, it was my first girlfriend at West Point. I just gave her a synastry reading on her son. He really, he's older. He's her Saturn return baby. So when we're Saturn return 28, 29, so that's when he was born. So it's a very special connection when your son or daughter are born during your Saturn return baby. And she's wanting to develop a more close relationship. So I did a deep dive. It's a synastry reading, and I did a deep dive, and it was really cool because they're karmically connected. And I don't see this in all charts, but as much as she's meant to heal him, he is meant to heal her. And I could see that in the chart. And the typical Western thought on like, what do I do to improve my relationship with my son is to like walk on eggshells, try to figure out what they want. And I'm like, Shannon, you need to heal yourself and allow your son to see you as an adult, because he's got this access to your world of secrets. And I think if you just showed him your vulnerability, it's going to enable him to be vulnerable too. And like, it's beautiful. And, she was worried about not getting along. And I'm like, oh my God, like the two of you are so karmically tied that you have nothing to worry about. So it's really cool insight.
I love that because I was literally watching a video yesterday by a life coach who works with people who are trying to co-parent after divorce, and I really love his content. And he was sharing about how one of the best things that a single mother or the mother in general can do for her son to raise a strong man is to allow him to see her vulnerable and to not hide her emotions from him, and to allow him to meet her in that space with her vulnerable emotions. And I think that's so counterintuitive to what we're taught in Western culture, where there's
Totally.
this Freudian, like perspective that if a mother is emotionally close with her son, that there must be something wrong. But when you then think about, like, taking it back to matriarchy, like, mothers are the source of the spiritual, and we're the source of the emotions and the vulnerability. And if we can allow our sons to have that connection with us, we are teaching them to honor their own emotions. They learn that from their mothers.
So beautiful, so beautiful. It's not going into too specifics, but this person had some really horrible things that happened to her when she was little, and she raised her son, and it happens by default. You're so protective. She was a single parent. She's so protective, and how to disclose that. Yeah, like, disclosing that could actually be healing for him. He can look back and be like, now I understand. Now I understand maybe the things that I have learned, but it's so healing, the vulnerability piece. And we do need to teach our young men and, generations of women who don't want to let their guard down. They feel like they have to constantly protect others and show this persona of this, like, Irish Catholic woman who's super strong. And we're doing a disservice.
Well, yeah, I think about it in relationship with my own son. I mean, if I want him to be a good partner in the future who's emotionally available to whoever his partner is, whether it's a man or a woman, how can I teach him that vulnerability? He's not going to learn it from the other parent. It's my job to teach him that by leading by example, by being open and vulnerable and allowing him to feel.
It's amazing.
I was thinking through this for a second and thinking, a lot of my friends have elderly parents right now. And on the Triggers and Glimmers episode River and I was talking because I was doing it from Sherman Oaks at my mom, at my childhood home.
Yep.
And the conversations that I was having with my mom around divorce and how she was being triggered, and how through this growth, I've been able to diffuse when she typically would get defensive. I was able to diffuse it through kind gestures, words, and letting her know that I was just sharing from the perspective of my 11-year-old self, that I didn't know her truth then. I understand it and validate it now, what she was going through. And it was such a healing moment that I know from just talking to people and seeing posts and, and reading sometimes I just go dive into all of the comments, because that helps me to understand the humanity of, like, what's happening with a lot of these people. But I feel like doing a synastry chart. Yeah, not that's not sinister, but I'm just
it can be
if you need it to be, but like doing a synastry chart, like, what a beautiful gift to give your elderly parent later in, like, because we don't know if we have a tomorrow with them, right? Like,
that's
you
right.
lost your mom at a very early age. I lost my dad at 2020. Like, we weren't ready for, like, it was so fast that, of course, I feel like I did get to say everything to him, but not everybody has that same same sweet, closure to that. So I feel like I really want to share the fact that you can do this with a parent or both parents, if they're still alive, if they're lucky to have them both, and understanding, like, where things can be improved upon without that defensive piece. And sometimes hearing it from a stranger, like, hey, if you guys, this is how you show up in this house, and like educating the elderly parents on a
Yeah.
call after you've like have an understanding of their charts. I think that would just be such the least defensive. Like, you're not in therapy with them. You're just like, hey, I just thought this would be really cool to do together. And like maybe like deepen our relationship for these next 10 to 15 years, like God willing, right?
Yeah, well, the cool thing about astrology and any of these modalities is that you, especially the way that I was taught, it's super important for me to have the people that I'm reading have something practical to implement. And that happens through things resonating and me doing a deep dive and asking a bunch of questions. But I think the end result is really to empower that person so that they can see next steps to evolve. And they're part of that process. And it's kind of really beautiful. Knowing my father's chart, and we all had the holidays, and some of us were with family. It was a rough time for me. I've made some intentions to really grieve my mother's passing that happened when I was 18 years old. And knowing my dad's chart and knowing that he's got tons of water, like I can see what I need to do to heal the relationship. It's just really helpful. If I know somebody has a lot of air in their chart, they intellectually curious, it's a different approach. So the astrology really does give you kind of like some pointers and some insight into how to approach different people and better understanding. I think it's really beautiful.
I think that's kind of for me what separates you from a lot of other astrologers, because there's this deep intuition in you that you've started to trust so much that it's really like, I love when I happen to catch you after a friend has left, hanging out with you for the week, and you've like had some of these deep dives, and you're going through their charts just because that's just who you are. You're such a sweet giver that way. And then you're like, it was crazy to watch this all unpack. Like, I had the idea XYZ, and then she started to tell me all these things, and I was like, check, check. Like, your intuition was so like on point, and it's like allowed you to really trust. And I think that's why it's just so beautiful when you bring two people together and share that. Or there's just a lot of healing you've been able to accomplish with your close core soul bio family.
Mm-hmm. It's been pretty beautiful. It also has been supplemented since I retired by plant medicine. So I think just
Hold on, wait, give everyone
another
the context. Like, she could not do anything illegal. Like, no, I mean, in the sense
even
of
CBD, even CBD.
Yeah, even CBD for a gazillion years, 30 years, you know what I mean?
I couldn't even put CBD on my dog or my cat.
Right.
It's like how insane. So yeah, like
because she had a urine test, it might show up, and then she has an exemplary, career. And yeah, so this part of the story, it's fascinating now that she's allowing and exploring and like just staying so open to wherever the journey takes her at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's seen Change Your Mind or Fantastic Fungi, I mean, what we are learning, and another important date is April 20th. You've got the planet of evolution, Uranus, is
Someone's
going to be
birthday is 420. It's
yeah. Well, oh yeah, that's right. I remember seeing that when I was looking at your chart. Uranus is going to be conjunct Jupiter. So it's almost like another changing of the guard type of thing. But what it's highlighting in Taurus, because it's in the Taurus, it's all about external security and food and nature and our planet. And there's a moment in time where we're going to I hope to God, with the AI and all these amazing things that we're gonna see in our lifetime, for it to be used to evolve, that's what I feel like that the 20th is going to signify. You got the planet of expansion, you got the planet of love and joy is going to be conjunct the evolution planet. And what could happen initially is the Uranus might churn things up. It might like show you the things that aren't working in order to give rise to those voices, like people who are treating PTSD with MDMA, like people who are using microdosing for psilocybin. Like these things we knew in the 50s, all the clinical research was positive, and then we had Just Say No to Drugs, which took it offline, but we know the benefits. And it is really a quick, the mushrooms, they know where to go. And like, I've been microdosing. I attended a retreat with a higher dose, and I affectionately call it a shit show. My life has opened in ways that I did not think was possible. And my access to my feelings, my access to childhood wounds and being able to heal and self-soothe, I'm rewiring that fight or flight mechanism. It's so beautiful. And this to me is what we're looking at. The people who are destroying our planet, we're giving rise to the people who want to save it. And plant medicine is a great example of it.
Love it. Now, River, are you sold? Would you try plant medicine?
Oh, I've done mushrooms.
Oh, you have? Because you like don't do anything at the moment.
No, I mean I don't currently, but I have done it twice. And my first experience with it was a very spiritual experience. For the most part, but yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
So I actually hadn't had the intention of doing them, and went to Forest Park in Portland with my at the time boyfriend who was doing them, and I just decided, fuck it, we're gonna do it. And I spent several hours laying underneath a tree in Forest Park having an amazing conversation with that tree. And it was very enlightening. I learned a lot about myself and the planet because of that one tree. And I still go back and visit that tree frequently because that tree has like a very big spirit, and we very much connected. So when I go to Forest Park, I go when I visit that tree and like give it a hug.
Way.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
So
that is really awesome.
And the night that I met River that day, we did mushroom. She didn't do them because she wasn't coming near that all-female bonfire. That's for another story. But but we did mushrooms that night, and I remember telling her, I'm like, I could hear the desert. I could hear
it's
a different clarity. It's like a whole different clarity, and you're able to like
you're in the cosmos.
Yeah.
You're in the cosmos. Yeah, I mean, they've
scary
done study after study after study.
Not overdoing it. You're getting just enough of the dose, and if it's not kicking in, then you just take a little bit more, and you feed yourself small bites until you kind of understand where you're at a place where you're like, I'm good. This is
perfect. And in my experience, like it was such a good experience until I had to leave nature and go back to our apartment in downtown Portland. And it was like that transition while I was still tripping was like going from being in nature, being connected to the universe, being in that heart space, all of that, to going into the chaos of humanity. Like I very much saw that highlighted. And I was writing the maps for downtown Portland, and like just seeing people and like feeling their pain along the way was just so wild, and it caused me to have a bad trip after that. So after a while I was like, I'm not touching that again. But
that's interesting.
It was interesting to see that transition of like, so now knowing I don't think I would ever do that again unless I was in a nature setting where I could be calm and at peace and connected without the chaos of
or if you had a spirit guide, because like a spiritual guide, like I think like nowadays these guides are popping up all over the country, and we have to be safe, and it's not legal it's not legal just yet, and I think that's going to change. MDMA is scheduled to get off the Schedule A list here soon, But then, that's what I've enjoyed, really having a practitioner who is guiding me and giving me the tools, the somatic healing tools. And to me, that makes me feel much more comfortable. So that, because I don't have
I
any
also
experience.
feel the reason why you had a great experience and why I had a great experience, Kris, is because we were around the like-minded people who could hold that
Yeah.
space, because we're all in it's like the worst thing ever. Remember in our 20s when we would show up to a drunk party sober, and that is just no bueno. That sucks. So I think when you're all in that same level and like, that energy, it's like it just kind of flows through you.
Yeah. Yeah. Setting an intention is really, really important. Setting and the intention behind things is super, super important. I mean, that's unfortunately what, got all these hallucinogenic drugs off the streets, because they broke out of the clinical setting, and then they were just party drugs, and they really weren't being used necessarily for spiritual purposes or for clinical purposes. And now we've got all the clinical research happening. It's mind-boggling. I really feel like in 10 years we are going to be much more aggressively treating mental disease with these mushrooms and MDMA and
100%.
ketamine, which is already being done. Yeah, it's beautiful. So it's really, really beautiful. And I think this year is, yeah, go.
I was just going to say, with like maybe the last thought on this, on plant medicine with it, but are there some resources that you've enjoyed that you would be willing to share, so I can share them in the notes? Like, obviously just, if they're just cool articles, like plant medicine, 101, or if there are any other retreat places that you've heard of now, because you're sort of in that community, anything that you feel like you would like to share, I'd love to share it in the show notes, so that if anybody is curious about, like me, I'm curious, I would love to do a retreat for sure. Like, if you're going back, I want to go with you next time. But
yeah, I would love to have
I definitely
you.
want to experience that, because the other part on my list is ayahuasca, which, I'm definitely wanting to do as well. And I have a few things for that, but I mean, to like go to Peru or Costa Rica or something like that.
You can do it in the United States, actually.
I know.
So
I've heard it some places.
Yeah, I can
like North Carolina has like ayahuasca retreats.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Like, that just seems weird in a red state.
If people contact me, I'm more than happy to give specifics, and then I can provide you like information about the different articles and all that stuff. But because it's still, we have to be really careful still. Yeah. So, but I'm happy to talk to people if they contact me. And
okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
I love that. So what's happening with the rest of like 2020? Anything notable that people should be looking for? And, with regards to looking for an astrologer to bring into your circle as far as part of your, I call it kind of like team spirituality. Are there any green flags you want to share, or anything that, when people are looking for an astrologer, that they should be looking for?
Well, one, they should contact me, because I'm happy to give them a reading. And if they're interested in like a 20-minute thing as well, and I know I'll provide this info to you so you can put it on the link and all that. But like, I think it's important to go to an esoteric astrologer, somebody who really believes that there's blue and red lines on your chart. The blue lines are your talents, and these are the things that come easy to you, and the red lines are the challenges. And we believe, at least in esoteric astrology, you're given the exact number of red lines to help you evolve. And so in astrology, there's this interesting perspective of, you have free will, you have the ability to make choices. Then there's things that are just fate, like you and me, the three of us, and how we met, the two of you and me and Michelle, that like fate will bring things together. And I know Michelle's heard me say this 1,000 times. Like, if something is meant to be, if this person is your twin flame or if this person is your soulmate, there's nothing that you can do that's going to prevent that from happening.
Right.
And so we have this weird thing of like control, but like, so we have free will. And then the stars themselves, the planets, give you access to this energy. For Geminis out there, if you're Gemini rising or Gemini moon or Gemini sun, you've got Jupiter moving into Gemini. So it's a good luck year for the Geminis out there. But be careful, because that Gemini energy is like, I want to do 50,000 things. When Jupiter visits you, you feel expansive and you feel like all this potential. So don't sign up to do 1,000 things. When Jupiter visits the Geminis out there, it'll be visiting all of us. So it'll activate whatever house you've got in Gemini. Then that means you need to like be selective. What are those things that bring you joy, and do those things, and don't try to overextend yourself, because that energy can really extend you. You wanted to know, River, for you, you've got Jupiter visiting your 8th house. It's going to start in the 7th house. So that's about expanding your relationships. And it's going to cross Venus for you. So this year through next year, it'll start May through May of next year. You're going to have something expand your relationship world, which could be a person. It could be another friend. It could be, you're connecting through the podcast, but it's really good luck. And that happens once every 12 years. So that's for you. Wow. And then when it's on top of Venus, you're going to have an opportunity to look at shadows, because it's highlighting your 8th house, which is the house of shadow, which means you get to transform your relationships. You'll have access to like shining a light on the darkness that's preventing you from really showing up in relationships. So it's you've got a very beautiful transit that's popping up. Michelle, I don't have anything good for you. Just kidding.
It's okay.
I love it.
It's okay if it's
though.
another deep ass dive this year. I'm ready for it.
Let's
really
take a look.
quick, I wanted to ask, I've been talking with some people about astrology recently who aren't super familiar with astrology, and they're new to it, and they've of course heard, your sun sign, and they say, oh, my sun sign doesn't necessarily resonate for me, so I've just kind of written it off. And I've told them, well, it's really more about like your unique chart and like your rising sign and your moon and like all the different placements. And then I keep hearing the same feedback from people. Well, I just look at my chart and I feel so confused because I don't understand what all these houses are about. So could you like really quick give like a synopsis on what the houses are?
Yep.
What is that in terms of a chart, and like why is that important for people to know?
And is the sun sign really the end all be all for people when they're like reading horoscopes every day? I mean,
yeah, it's a really great question. I actually started doing horoscopes for gay astrology, and the horoscope is really meant for the rising sign. And the reason why is I'm going to explain.
Wait, it's not for the sun sign, it's for our ascent sign. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Well, and the reason why is because it's more specific to your chart. Mm-hmm. When you're born, a little person, goes out of the hospital bed and takes a picture up at the stars in the sky, and whatever's rising on the east side of the country in the eastern horizon, that is your rising sign. And that is determined by your time of birth. With the rising sign, that's where all the houses start. So the houses 1, 2 through 12, and that overlays your natal chart that shows you all of your zodiac signs. The reason the houses give me insight with the major transits, the big planets have an impact on collective humanity. Jupiter, Saturn, you've all heard Saturn return. But what's really the insight for your chart specifically is what house is getting activated, because these planets, like a lot of us share Saturn and Taurus, depending on what year we were born, because Saturn stays in a sign for 2 years. So there's a lot of generational signs. So that's helpful. But what's more helpful is to know what house is in. And that's where an astrologer can really help you do a deep dive. Like when I was talking about
Wait,
River's
so
eighth
if I'm going
house.
to start
Yeah.
utilizing moon omens, because we like all love moon omens, like they just do such a beautiful job of dumbing it down for us newbies, you know?
Yep.
So am I not to look at Aquarius anymore? I should just start reading Libra and kind of roll from there since that's my,
No, so moon omens is actually doing all three. They usually will say rising sign, they'll say sun sign. So you can take a look at all, but like when they're specific to the rising sign, that is the thing that's going to be the more specific piece, if
gotcha.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question.
Well, because
So
that's how people get kind of lost in it a little bit, or they get a little bit deflated because it doesn't resonate. And then they just kind of go, astrology sucks. You know what I mean?
it's
When
true.
Yeah.
it's just because there's not enough education around it. So I don't know if out of this conversation, Kris, you start deep diving a little bit of, clearing, being like getting, a clearer space for these folks so that they can understand it more.
It's a good point. Like horoscopes will not give you as much information as a natal chart reading. Even if I gave you a natal chart reading for 20 minutes, I'm going to give you much more insight into what's happening than you will with a horoscope because they really are for the masses. And I mean, I could be doing a Gemini rising horoscope for somebody, but if your moon is in the first 2 or 3 degrees versus the last 2 or 3 degrees, it makes a big difference. So it can be hit or miss, but I have found the rising signs are going to be the most specific to your chart.
Wait, so you told her when someone is coming into her life or she should, when is mine? Like in 2026?
Yeah. So you
Because
do
I'm
have
because I'm okay to like linger in this space right now.
And now I'm all nervous. I'm like, oh
I'm
shit,
fine.
hey.
I'm just
May.
fine.
this year, you've got Saturn crossing Venus. So remember how I was talking how you had Neptune on Venus, which causes a little bit of, oh my God, this person's perfect for me, but it's not really grounded in reality. I mean, we all do this. You're not the
Yeah.
only person. But
Yeah.
but with Neptune sitting on you got Saturn crossing Venus this year. And so with Saturn crossing Venus, usually that means a new relationship, new something. It's either growth in a relationship or there's something new coming into your life. So you definitely have the potential as well. You both have Venus activity
In
going
May?
on your charts. I have to give you, later I can look specifically at what the
Oh, yeah.
date is.
Just
But
kidding.
let's see, it's gonna be 23. Hey, I can look real quick. Just really Saturn is gonna make it all the way up to
Isn't
19
she
and then it
so freaking
drops.
adorable when she's doing
Yeah,
this?
I love
I
this
love her.
stuff. It's
I know,
it's
she
early.
lights up.
I love it. It's really, really amazing. You'll start feeling the activation at the end of this year and it crosses early next year.
I'm down for
But
that.
you might be meeting somebody at the end of this year.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun. Because right now I'm
Yeah.
just meeting myself.
Well, that's an important person to love and nurture.
It
Have a
really is.
self-attach. We all have to have good, secure attachments to ourselves more so than anybody else first.
What happens when we start like when you're dating and you like start to meet somebody before that transit comes in? Is there going to come up as like challenges and obstacles? Oh no. You can
No, sometimes the energy starts sooner. Sometimes it starts later. Sometimes it
But is it
leads to
depending
something
upon their
else.
chart too? Like it depends on.
It can be. Yeah, that's where the synastry.
Yeah, that's cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty cool. I love utilizing. So what other ways could we utilize astrology going forward? And just for the collective here on the pod, for the pod, I'll have Kris send me the best link possible for like not only her website, but also like a really reputable astrology site where if someone's just fascinated and wants to like learn
Oh
more,
yeah,
you know what I
learn.
mean?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
astro.com is really easy.
Oh,
And that really
astro.com.
you can do your own chart by putting your date of birth and your place of birth. But yeah, ask me your question again.
With
We covered Yeah, we've covered a bunch of things, applications for the astrology. And
Yeah. What would be some other applicable ways that people utilize astrology in their day to day, like with you, day to day, whatnot?
I think like the most impactful thing is when you're going through major transits. Like when you have a Pluto transit, um, you both have them. This is a couple years for you, Michelle. Pluto's gonna cross over your sun, and that's gonna be pretty transformative. And then River, you've got this year, Pluto's gonna be squaring your sun. So that could also be very transformative. I think an astrologer and having access to somebody that can help you make sense out of the lessons that you're meant to learn, it gives you a permission slip and it gives meaning. As an example, I had a friend that I reconnected with, and she's potentially like, she's thinking that maybe she needs to get a divorce. She's not sure. And I take a look and I see Pluto is crossing her descendant line. That is her relationship line. And it gave her permission to really do this deep dive into her relationship to herself and how she wasn't showing up for herself. And knowing that she had this energy and knowing that she wasn't crazy, that all this stuff was happening, and it like there really was this energy that was occurring.
Well,
I
that's what
gave her
you
some
do.
peace
You're
of
able
mind.
to validate us. That's what I'm saying. Like when I call you and I'm like, blah, 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 and you're like, oh, let me look. And then you're like, yep. So sometimes I think I love that, because if it gave her permission to look within and look along that line, knowing that this is out there, like, oh, that, not to make any haste decisions, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it allowed her to just sort of sit within her and not take it as a sign that the relationship is doomed.
Yeah, and it also, like, depending on what the transit is, like, there's a lot of people out there that don't want to do therapy, but like some of these transits are all about turning your emotional world and transforming your emotional world. And when I can say, you might want to consider, if you're are you feeling, this happened to me in another gay ass when I was at Ruby Fruit a couple months ago. I'm like, I was looking at the transits. I'm like, are tears coming up for you a little bit more so than normal? And she started crying.
Oh, that's
Yeah, because she was
crazy.
feeling, and when you're feeling these feelings, and you're like, what is going on? I must be crazy. And then an astrologer comes and tells you this is what's happening. It ascribes meaning to it too. Like, oh, this is happening so that I can transform, instead of this is happening to me. What do I do? Like, I don't even know what to do. This can't be real. I'm making it up. I must be crazy. But it's just really beautiful. It enables me to sit with somebody and give them tools and insight and meaning. And I think that's enough to where people can take a look at these really tough transits and understand that they're going to be totally transformed at the end of it. And that's, who doesn't want to be transformed?
Do you have like,
It's
do you have gift certificates and things like that that people can purchase for their friends or family or
Yes,
loved one, partner?
absolutely. And I can definitely, when we post, well, I'll go ahead and do a discount code for
Oh,
the
live
subscribers
out
here. Yeah,
loud
for
yeah.
sure.
for the subscribers. We love that.
Yeah.
What were you
Yeah,
going to
for
say,
sure.
River?
I was gonna say, just speaking to that, like astrology and learning these things being so affirming. I know, um, I had this recognition when I was going through started my divorce process. I was working with our friend Angela, who's kind of like my spiritual guide, and we were doing intuitive readings, and she doesn't deep dive astrology at all. It's not her area, but I've noticed that in working with her, that her intuition lines up
Yeah.
Mm,
exactly with
Yep.
my astrology. So as she would tell me things, so like for
Yep.
example, before my divorce started, my very first reading with her, she was like, I feel very strongly that you're going to be going to like the redwoods, and I did. I had a trip planned to the redwoods, and she was like, something very important is going to happen for you when you're in the redwoods. It's going to be transformative, like lean into that energy. And then when I lined that up with my astrology chart, like there was a transit happening starting that led
Yep.
to my divorce process. And
Yep.
so it's just interesting how intuition for a lot of people lines up with the astrology, and it can be so affirming
Like with
of
the
not only what you're
1111.
like what's coming up, but like what you're currently
Yeah.
going through. And then like you look to the past and you're like, oh, okay, that makes way more sense for the past now. If only I'd had these tools then.
For sure. And like with the 1111 portal, it was fascinating that that closed out a 2-year cycle, all exactly when I decided to get the divorce and went through this whole
Yep.
transformation
Same.
until
Same.
November. Like
Yep.
that was mind blowing. That was so affirming at
Yep.
how powerful astrology
Yep.
can be.
It's true. Yep. The lunar eclipses and how they work. You know, we've got Aries Libra this year. It's really about I am the underdog, representing the underdog and claiming your own warrior power to evolve versus giving away your power and not saying anything. So these themes will keep coming up this year. And then on the downside, you've got the warriors doing more war, and like, and then, so you got the negative energy too. The eclipses, they kind of magnify both the positive energy and the negative energy. But like, yeah, you will see a theme with war and speaking your mind this year. It's kind of, I mean, we're in a transition.
Do you feel like you want to create retreats and be a part of retreats and things like that? So if anybody,
this is a great example. I mean, this is next phase. I think I'm really in the apprenticeship piece of really fine-tuning my skills and really getting a good idea of what's occurring in the planet. And then absolutely, I'm actually starting a training program to be able to do retreats. And that is my goal. I want to have a larger impact on more people. And we've got, Michelle, we've got so many amazing people that we can have. You guys can be at the retreat. I mean, like, come on, just Angela will be there. Like,
Today I'm literally starting a long course today for sacred space facilitatorship. I'm starting that tonight. Our first Zoom call is tonight.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's an area I've been called into.
That's right.
So I'm starting, I actually got a scholarship for it, and I'm starting that today.
I know.
I'm so excited.
It happened so cool too. It was meant to be. It was like, it just like, she just kept saying, and they kept coming back to her. I was like, dude, the universe is literally like those memes, like, hello, say yes. And you're like,
well, and it's wild because like, I did my tarot forecast for 2024, and my theme for 2024, my theme card was the Hierophant, which is all about like spiritual education, higher like learning, being guided from other people on the next stage of your journey. And I feel that energy this year very much. And I'd be curious about my chart if that shows up anyway either.
My card for the year, what was it? Ace of Cups? Is that what it was? Yeah. Which just for me really represents the fact that I'm just leading with like joy every day. I'm just trying to do what lights me up, which definitely, generates a bunch of fun activities in my world. So, because I'm a generator with human design, and it sort of aligns.
So as we're wrapping up, what would be one thing that you would tell the collective for 2024 as like a piece of hope, or a piece of just how to hang in there and ride the waves? Like, what would be the advice you'd have for the collective?
Yeah, I really feel like we're in the changing of the guards. I think we are in the last kind of, Pluto moves slowly. So we're not talking about that's going to like happen, something that's going to happen within 2 or 3 years of when it's in Aquarius. But this year we may see more negative things because we still are waking up the planet. And so hang in there. We are babies in the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius, it will have this humanitarian collective. We are taking over from the elites, from the people that have been in charge. And the goal is to evolve the planet and to take better care of our planet. That is where we're moving. This year, there's going to be snippets where you're going to see that positivity, but you'll see some of the negative too. And, I think we just got to keep waking more people up.
And I think it really starts, like, I think the smallest shift to waking up is literally just doing one thing a day that fills you up, that joy, that creates joy. And because that is like a beautiful domino effect. So if you're doing more things that light you up, you're walking around and it's energetically and, like lighting other people up around because it's an energy source, you're like an energy field walking the planet. And if you're miserable, then you're just low vibrations.
Yeah.
So when we raise our individual vibrations, we raise collectively everyone else around us by a domino effect. Even if they don't know it or not, they're just like, I really loved my time hanging out with you. You're like, that's the validation. Like, thank you.
Exactly.
Because that means
But
I was
keep showing up.
exactly.
Yep.
Chris, thank you so much. I love you.
Yes.
You're the best.
Thank
I love you
you.
too. Thank you
This was
so much for
wonderful.
having me on.
No, thank you for sharing your gift. And I
Yeah.
can't wait to share you with the world. And I'm just so excited for this year and to see where we all are. And
Yep.
will you come back? Because I would love to do as we come
Yeah.
up to like, and we'll let you tell us like, ooh, a big transit's coming. Let's like jump
Yep.
on and share this with people or whatever.
I would love to.
Yay.
I would love to.
Okay, love
Thank
you,
you.
girls.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this episode today, be sure to subscribe and share because what do we say, baby?
Sharing is caring.